So once again, this week's episode of Flight Chat almost didn't happen because some stuff came up yesterday, which, wasn't an emergency, but just threw my schedule off a little bit. And we still didn't get, any more emails. Every email that I'm talking about today in this show largely still comes from last week. There was one other email that did come in a couple of days ago, or actually yesterday, to be honest with you. I'm not even 100% certain that it made the deadline, but it doesn't matter because it's all we've got. So only got 3 participants this particular week for feedback, but hey, it is what it is. We'll go through it. Maybe it's the holidays or something. I don't know. But either way, we will begin this week's episode with a gaggle of emails from John Rossler. And his first email that he sent 2 weeks ago on November 2nd is called Flight Chat Multimedia Recap. He says, I've been consuming quite a bit of different media the last couple of weeks. He's got some films. Let's see. He saw Deliver Me From Nowhere. He says, my father worships the boss more than any musician on the planet, so it only makes logical sense that we see it in the same screening. Fair enough. This is the Springsteen biopic with Jeremy Allen White. And he says, I gotta say, Jeremy Allen White, as things stand, in my opinion, gave the best performance playing a real-life person that I've ever seen. There wasn't a single moment that I didn't think he was the boss. Changing his eye color to match Bruce's really helped a lot. The film made me realize that even the best among us are actually just as at times when it comes to, or just as us, I guess, at times when it comes to depression and mental health. John Lennon, Sid Barrett, Brian Wilson, Elvis, even today's stars Taylor Swift, Chaperone, Lady Gaga, and other famous people still need the same type of help like many of us lower class people. I wouldn't say lower class, working class. I'll say that, but I would not say lower class. Let's not denigrate ourselves in that one. K-pop Demon Hunters. Oh, he's joined not jumped that train or jumped that shark, if you will, but joined that bandwagon, I should say. He says there's something kind of shallow about the film, but that's the charm of it too. It's captured the pop culture zeitgeist in a way I haven't seen for an animated film since, I want to say, Encanto. Oh, I have not seen that one. Or K-pop Demon Hunters for that matter. He says the songs are on the radio. The songs are as close to real K-pop songs that were also used in the movie. When we attended FanCon in the mail for the costume contest, it was flooded with K-pop DH cosplayers. Okay? It's very pandering to the fans of the genre, although I had fun watching it. You know how you say Bay Transformers or cheeseburger movies? Wow, I said that a long time ago, but yes, I do remember saying that. K-pop Demon Hunter is like eating candy like Nerds or Pop Rocks or Starbursts. You ever eat candy where you can taste too much sugar? That's what it felt like. You know what? And honestly, I'm not big on too much sugar, but there are plenty of people that find that entertaining, and that's what it comes down to at the end of the day. I've never seen this film. I don't know what it does necessarily to K-pop or anime, but it's all subjective with respect to that. I don't know if so you're calling it like a cheeseburger movie. You're saying it's like a cheeseburger movie. Okay. Then that is not a bad thing inherently. That is an enjoyable thing, even if you may have to take an extra trip to the dentist or two afterwards. All right, series. He says Demon Slayer anime, there we go, is definitely a strong start, and I'm looking forward to watching more of the series. All right. Netflix series called Long Story Short. This was a hard watch, depressing at times, he says, but it had some happy moments that I empathized with. In fact, that's the best way to describe the show. The most empathetic I've been towards a show in a long time. It was created by the folks who made BoJack Horseman, which, hot take, I wasn't really a fan of, he says. It's like you feel about Seinfeld and Friends. It's not that the show was written bad. I just really couldn't find the fun or charm of the show. It's all just kind of a downer show. I never really had an incentive to watch many episodes. I also didn't watch Tuca and Birdie. But long story short, he says, was kind of a mistake to watch at this point in my life, but I also realize that I'm not alone in having sorrow or lamenting or reminiscing the past. It's non-linear, focusing on a Jewish family and their lives between 1991 and 2022. Okay. The setting is the San Francisco Bay Area. There's episodes that take place in Santa Rosa, Oakland, San Francisco, Mountain View, Petaluma, and Napa get name drops, and 1 or 2 New York/New Jersey episodes too. The one character, Avi Schwooper, he says is probably the most like me, and seeing him flash back to the happy times with his ex-wife in 2004 and then flash forwarding to modern 2020s in the condition he's in without going into spoilers, that hit home for me. He lost a family member and partner the same year, like I did. But there are elements in the other family members I could also see parallels to. The father, Elliot, has elements of my dad and my Uncle Rich, the Hebrew ceremonies. My brother loves the show, he says, and recommended to my mom, who recommended to me. I'm kind of glad I did see it. It makes me ponder about life and about how a lot of people things stay the same for most of their lives, but then there are people like me who go through so many different changes, he says. Sometimes the time and energy you put into a relationship for years gets lost to time, and that sucks because I don't want to view times with friends and exes who don't want to talk to me anymore as time wasters because they weren't. They were a journey. Some of those journeys I would have liked to continue. But sometimes life puts a fork in the road, and then you find yourself in another journey where you enjoy the current state of your life just as much as even if it's familiar, he says. I know for you there are shows you watch that resonate with your own background, and I've always had reservations about what being Jewish means for me as I consider myself mostly secular. Think Adam Driver's character in BlacKkKlansman. Being Jewish was an important part of their identity to my other family members, and that's the value of modern Judaism. Community, remembrance, forgiveness, he says. There was actually an entire episode of one of the main characters who's married to Shira, the middle daughter of the Schwooper family, named Kendra, a lesbian black woman who before they met actually decides to join the Jewish faith because of a lie at work, and it's a very powerful episode, especially the ending of that episode. He says, I also discovered there's a newer Judaism faith called Messianic Jews. They celebrate Jesus without surrendering their beliefs. He's referred to by his Hebrew name, Yeshua. Sorry for getting too sentimental, but the premise of the show really resonated with me. Well, clearly it did, because that longest few paragraphs here, those what? 6, 7 paragraphs. Clearly you had some strong thoughts with respect to that one, which is what media that resonates with you on a cultural level really should do. Really is supposed to do, right? It's supposed to make you introspective, or at least give you some further insight into your experience and maybe show some different perspectives of a similar experience that you've had in your life in that regard. So, hey, no worries, man. Completely understandable. It's all good. Still on television, it looks like. He says, been catching up on Ranma Half Season 2, although I'm not waiting for the exact moment for each new episode to drop. Oh, me and my dad, he says, watched some old home movies of his early years of his marriage to my mom and me as a 1-year-old, and then taking me around 1990s New York City. Family members in synagogue singing Hebrew songs at my naming ceremony, and then they also threw in the Beatles' All You Need Is Love. Maybe that's also why, long story short, hit too close to home for me. I remember the day when I was 18 when my parents told me they were getting divorced. That was a rough day for me and Max. I don't know if you or your family keeps home movies around. We do, definitely. For a living, my father's and grandfather's business, Spectrum Photo Video, processed physical media and did different transfer variations. Transferring slides and photos and videos, film reels, photos, VHS, DVD, cassette, and CD. So I, like you, Ray, do understand the importance of preserving physical media, but I'm also a proponent of saving them online, as well as eventually physical media stops working, whereas digital will be around for a long, long time. We hope, John, we hope. Because here's the thing. I hear what you're saying about physical media breaking down, but that's where preservation comes into play. And preservation doesn't just mean preserving the original medium that it was recorded on. It also preserves what you transfer it to. And hard drives crash and can be wiped out with an EMP, and you lose access to your files forever. So we can't say that digital will be around for a long, long time, because anything can take it out. Whereas physical media, with respect to, actual information on a disc or actual information on a cassette tape, that can be preserved and be around for even longer if you preserve it well, if you, maintain the upkeep. We're not saying put it down in a dank basement with a ton of moisture, store it improperly, right? You've got to, maintain it. You've got to keep up on it. You've got to make certain that it's in good shape in that regard, as well as your, whatever VCRs or whatever you've got, to be able to play it back. Keep those in good shape as well. So it's all, relative, I guess, is the best way that I can put it in that regard. But no, digital is convenient. I wouldn't say that digital is a great archive. It's not the best archive in that regard. Physical, I think, is still the best archive, locally speaking in that regard. But digital is convenient. I mean, it can be very, easy to access, but not necessarily the best for archival purposes for any medium for a number of reasons. Not the least of which is longevity, because you just don't know what could happen. One motor in your hard drive goes bad, and I don't mean to wish that on anybody, but I've had it happen before where I've lost things that, were on hard drives that I can't recover because I don't have the tools or the wherewithal to be able to recover them. And others do. And of course, they charge an arm and 3 legs for it to be able to recover it for you. So yeah, I will not put nearly as much trust in digital as a backup or anything going forward as an archive, I should say. I will not put nearly as much trust in it as I do in physical media. So I'll definitely throw that out there. But here, that was another paragraph that will technically count under a long story short. So that show definitely had an impact on you. For music, he says, on my Spotify playlist, I get recommended Todd Rundgren, Paul McCartney, and George Harrison sometimes mixed in with my playlist. 2 songs on McCartney's debut solo album, Every Night and Junk, pop up a lot, and I get pretty emotional, he says. Recently, I had to think of my favorite Rolling Stones song. I went with Beast of Burden. Favorite Rolling Stones song. Now, there is a question. Gotta think about that one. Off the top of my head, the ones that definitely strike a chord are probably Gimme Shelter. You know what? Actually, Gimme Shelter. Yep. Gimme Shelter is probably my favorite. And yes, part of that is because I hear it in damn near every Scorsese movie, and I love Martin Scorsese. But also, Paint It Black is also great. You know what? Brown Sugar. Brown Sugar's a nice one. I love the guitar on Brown Sugar. That's a very nice one. And also Street Fighting Man. That's a good one. So yeah, I'm naming a few here just off the top of my head with respect to the Rolling Stones pantheon. Some Rolling Stones tunes that I like, that I thoroughly enjoy. And I'm sure there are plenty others that I could come up with if I thought harder of it. But Beasts of Burden, I'll have to listen to see exactly which one that is. But here we go. Sports. Because remember, John said he went to the Red Wings San Jose Sharks game a couple of weeks ago, and he says it was quite a game, Ray. But hey, I call it for what it is. Congratulations to your team. Yes, the Wings did win that game. They had a really good road trip. Wings went 3-2 in that road trip out west, which out west is a tough road trip for a team in the Eastern time zone. He says, I am now 1-3 when it comes to attending live games. The Chiefs beat the Raiders at a 2007 game I went to, and the Giants beat the A's at a 2011 game. The NBA game I went to did the home team prevail when the Warriors beat the New Jersey Nets in 2008. I hope the Red Wings win the Stanley Cup. They won't. I absolutely 1,000% will tell you, no, they will not, Jonathan. They are not a Stanley Cup contending team. We're not even certain that they are a playoff team. They have shown some promise, and they've had a better start to the season this year than they have in recent years, but that's not saying a whole lot. So we will see how they go. But no, I can tell you with a virtual certainty, they shan't be winning the Stanley Cup anytime soon. I wish they would, but no, not quite. But hopefully you enjoyed the game. It wasn't a blowout. I know it was a close game. I think, did the shootout? Didn't that one go to a shootout? A couple of their games went to a shootout. I think the San Jose game was one of those. So those are always fun to watch for sure. But all right, on to John's second email, which he sent the very next day on November 3rd, called Additional Flight Chat Feedback. Quick responses he forgot to include in the last email, he said. As for Panda Express, he says everyone I've been to since living in California, New York, and Florida has the same taste in meat, but the chow mein is usually different, like in Florida. Many of them don't use celery in their chow mein, which makes me irate just thinking about it. Glad I don't live there anymore. What does Florida have against celery? Is it the same thing they have against vaccines? I don't know. Oh, did I say that out loud? Whatever. Florida. Be safe when you go to Florida. Seriously. They're plague enthusiasts down there. But either way. He says, hard to say what my favorite Hitchcock movie is. For the longest time, I want to say Vertigo as a top 3 all-time favorite movie in general. But now, it's either that one or I gotta rewatch North by Northwest again. I was obsessed with Mount Rushmore as a kid. The idea of 4 president heads on a mountain was always an intriguing concept, but as I got older and found out that the land was stolen, I had to reevaluate my appreciation for the landmark. Yep, you and many others for sure, John. I'm with you on that. Additional NHL and other sport tidbits. He sent some pictures of him and his dad at the game. That's cool. Thank you. Appreciate that. He said, sucks to see the Dodgers beat the Blue Jays. I had no idea that the Dodgers were MAGA. Not all of them. Not the entirety of the team, and certainly not the entirety of the fan base. But yeah, there was some photo op, I think, that they had the current president at. And also it was rumored, I don't know if it was rumored or confirmed, that they allowed agents from the Immigrations and Custom Enforcement who've been, doing a lot of illegal and unlawful things this year, use their parking lot for a couple of operations or whatever, something to that effect. But there are some players. Clayton Kershaw definitely has been documented as one of them. That is, hardcore for the regime filled with Nazis and those who protect abusers of children in that regard. That's as much as I will say with respect to that. Disgusting, no doubt about it. But no, I can't extend it to the entirety of their roster or the entirety of their fan base, but one is too many, of course. He says, this morning I was curious to see if the San Jose Sharks had ever won a Stanley Cup, which surprisingly they never had. Yep, could have told you that they didn't. They reached the finals one year, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. He says, I had a friend who's obsessed with the Sharks. He probably told me this when they made it to the finals in 2016, and I probably forgot. His obsession was so insane he drove 2 arcs to the Sharks arena just to see the Sharks in Pittsburgh against the Penguins. I understand the significance, but you're spending a lot of money just to go to an empty ice rink. I just try to find the biggest screen available, like a movie theater. I once watched WWE SummerSlam inside a theater with a friend. All right, here's where I will disagree with you on that, John. Because the thing is, I know you're looking at it as an empty arena, but it's not empty because there are other fans there. And I don't know what the capacity was. I don't know how much of a turnout there was in San Jose that year, but I can tell you years that it's happened in Detroit. Joe Louis Arena back in the day absolutely has had a great turnout of fans. And plenty of arenas do this, like across the country and in Canada, where when the team is on the road during the playoffs, they'll either gather in the arena and watch it on the Jumbotron, or they will gather at like a public square somewhere and watch on a big, huge screen. And they'll have camera crews and people there. And the atmosphere in the environment is the fans, right? It's not the event itself. It's fans watching the event. And that's, half the reason you go to an event live in the first place. It's not just to watch the event. It's also to be in the presence of other loud, boisterous fans enjoying the event along with you. And so that's why I would push back on that and say, 2 hours is a long drive. But if you know you're going there and it's a once in a lifetime opportunity, you don't know when the next time the Sharks are going to go to the Stanley Cup Finals is, and you have an opportunity to experience that even in a loss with fellow San Jose Sharks fans, absolutely. Yes, I absolutely understand it. We got people that do that come down from Traverse City and whatnot to go, watch the Wings at Hockeytown Cafe. They did that years ago. And if the Wings ever get good again, they'll do that again. And they did it for the Lions. If I remember correctly, the NFC title game a couple years ago against the Niners, I think there was a watch party at Ford Field where the Lions play. That's just a thing. That is a thing, and I get it. The event isn't there, and that's why you say empty arena. But again, it's about the fans. The fans absolutely fill up that arena. Generally speaking, if the turnout there, and again, I don't know what the turnout was for San Jose 9 years ago, but if it's Stanley Cup Finals, I imagine. The Sharks have been around for 30 years, 30 plus years. They came in the early 90s NHL expansion. So they got a fan base. San Jose absolutely has a hockey fan base. It's weird to think of hockey out west like that, but they have it. They absolutely have it. It'd be even bigger if it were the Kings. The Kings are probably the biggest franchise hockey-wise out west. I know that, Anaheim has won a Stanley Cup in '07. The Kings have won 2 cups. In fact, it recently, like 2012 and 2014 was when they won their Stanley Cups, right? San Jose hasn't gotten up there yet, but yeah, there's an audience for it. There's a fan base for it without question. So no, I understand why your friend did that, and no, he did not go to an empty arena, I suspect, in my opinion. He says, it's still crazy that my Major League Sports attendance track record has only been 4 in-person games, and each just related to that sport. Again, he listed '07 NFL Chiefs over the Raiders, '08 Golden State Warriors over the Nets, the 1 win, 2011 New York Giants, San Francisco Giants defeating the A's, and then 2025 the Wings over the Sharks. He says, I don't think you count WWE as a sport, but the energy of the arena made it feel that way. Well, the fans, definitely the arena, that's similar. Absolutely, without question. But no, they don't really cover that on ESPN or Fox Sports or anything like that. So it's not one of those types of professional sports. No. October 2005 SmackDown taping, Cow Palace, San Francisco, back when they recorded their shows Tuesdays, but then aired them Thursdays. January, okay, he's got a list of WWE ones. January 2007, July 2007, Great American Bash, first time he actually went to the San Jose Sharks SAP Arena. The 2007 January one was an untelevised Raw house show in East Rutherford, New Jersey that his uncle took him and his brother to a show when they were visiting the East Coast. Went to WWE SmackDown in August 2011. Sacramento Kings Arco Arena. He said he also went there in 2006 with his dad to see Nickelback. All right. I wonder how people feel about Nickelback. WWE. No, pardon me. Before that, March 2015, WrestleMania 31 at the recently built 49ers Levi Stadium in San Jose, Santa Clara. A WWE non-TV live event Summer Heatwave Tour. July 2017, first time he'd ever watched something at Madison Square Garden, at least as an adult. He says, I don't remember anything before the age of 2. He's only ever been to 2 non-WWE pro wrestling shows in June 2007, an indie show and featured past and future stars, and on 2011, it was right down the street from the apartment he was living in at the time. One of these days, he says, I absolutely should try to go to an AEW show, especially if I'm going to live in San Jose. Do you know how many major sports games you've attended? Well, I don't have a list to break down. I feel like that'd be kind of boring for me to break down the list of all of them I've been to, because I've been to a lot. I have. I've seen the Tigers play at both Old Tiger Stadium and Comerica Park, multiple games. I remember 2006, the first year they went to the World Series in the modern era. I went to 3 games that year. It was 2-1 because they beat the Twins in April. They lost to the Yankees in May on Memorial Day in 104-degree temperature that gave my buddy's wife, now ex-wife, heat stroke. And they played the Cardinals. It was like an August game, I think, something like that, if I'm not mistaken. The Wings, I've seen the Wings play at Old Joe Louis Arena. I have not gone to Little Caesars Arena. I also haven't seen the Pistons play at Little Caesars Arena either, but I have seen the Pistons play, like back at the old Palace of Auburn Hills many years ago. Obviously, that was a lovely building. That was a really nice building. They really didn't need to. It wasn't so old that it needed to be torn down. It was a very nice facility, but they wanted to move the team back to Detroit and not have them be separated in Auburn Hills, being so far into the suburbs. And I get that, and I was in favor of that, but it was sad that the Palace had to be sacrificed as a result of that, because it was a really nice arena. It was a really nice facility, to be honest with you. And Little Caesars Arena, from what I've heard, is a really nice facility. Got to get down there for a game at some point. The Pistons are doing very well right now, so maybe that's a ticket I'll go see down there later this year. The Lions, yes, I have seen them at Ford Field. That's right. It's been a while, but I have seen them at Ford Field way back in the Jim Schwartz era, and I saw them once or twice at the Pontiac Silverdome back in the day. But also, I've been to college games. I've lost count how many times I've gone to see Michigan football at Michigan Stadium. There were 2 years that I covered it as like sports writer / editor-in-chief of the Michigan Times at U of M Flint. So I'm very well acquainted with the Big House, Michigan Stadium in Ann Arbor. And that goes all the way back to the first 2 games that my dad ever took me to back in 1997, the first year they won the national championship of the modern era. We saw them play Baylor and we saw them play Northwestern, and that was awesome. Those were some great times, no doubt about that. It's a great stadium. It's a fantastic stadium. Other sporting events, I mean, there's other minor league stuff that I've seen here. Like I've seen the Great Lakes Loons up in Midland, Michigan. I've gone to a Western Michigan football game at Waldo Stadium in Kalamazoo. I have gone there. That's all I can remember other than like high school sports. There's plenty of those I've been to as well. But yeah, lots of sporting events. I've been to tons of sporting events. And yeah, I know you said major, but I would count college as well, because even though it's not necessarily professional sports, it's damn near, to be honest with you. All right. Now some DC Discord and other questions he has. All right. Number 1. Has Gunnar Safran made any indication that DC animated films will be any characters? Like, I don't think the first DCU Justice League film would be a good idea to first be animated. I've heard nothing about that. I've heard absolutely nothing about that. I also don't necessarily have an issue with that being the case, though. Like, I know that as fans, we would love that film to be live action, but, I mean, truthfully, if you're establishing strong synergy between the animated content and the shows and the movies, then so what as far as it being animated? I mean, I guess it depends on whether or not you want to theatrically release it or whether or not you want it to be a vehicle for HBO Max, but that wouldn't bug me. I mean, I don't know what their plan is, but I wouldn't be so offended by that. I'll just say that, truthfully. But How far away we are from Justice League, I have no idea. That's a random question though. I haven't heard anything from Gunn and Safran with respect to DC animated films in the recent future or the not too distant future or anything like that. So I don't know. I've not heard anything from either one of them for any indication of that. Number two, if you decide to do a Discord, will it be exclusively Patreon members? I don't mind joining as a flight officer if that's the case. Interacting with Wallyu, Alex, Amr, Rachel, Sam, Stewart, etc. will be fun and I believe would be worth the price of admission. That's a good question because I'm not 100% on that. Not everybody that contributes regularly to the feedback circle is a Patreon member. A few of them are. Wallyu is, Jared is. And I think there's one or two others that might be. But Anthony and Phil and a number of the others are not. They have been in the past, but they're not currently. I don't know. That I haven't entirely determined yet. I feel like Patreon, I mean, that obviously that would be like a reason, like that would be like an entry point for the Discord and it would make sense. It would. From that particular standpoint, it would totally make sense. But will it be that, or will it also be like if you send in however many emails, or if you've contributed to Flight Chat for however long, would there also be that? Or if you were a previous Patreon member or current Patreon member, that could also be it. That could also be part of it. So I still got to determine that one, to be honest with you. So I'll see how that goes. But don't worry, you'll be the first to know once I figure that out. Number three, hearing your journey, locating that Tutti Fruit commercial reminded me of locating a Pop-Tart commercial, Wild Watermelon. I was obsessed with that flavor, Pop-Tart, he says, as a kid, and I was bummed when they discontinued it, and when they brought it back in the mid-2010s, it wasn't quite the same, but I still enjoyed it. Bought 4 boxes worth. What's your favorite Pop-Tart flavor? I only really have wild berry, although sometimes for a cheap dessert, I put the sundae flavor in the freezer. Apparently, my favorite Pop-Tart flavor is a controversial choice, because in the last couple of years, John, I've heard so many people say they hate it, but I don't get it. I really like frosted cherry. That's my favorite Pop-Tart flavor, and I think it gets horrifically uh, disrespected, I guess is the best way to put it. Because when I go to Sam's, when I go to Costco or somewhere, and they have like the big variety boxes, the big, huge, like bulk boxes of Pop Tarts, they never put cherry in the flavor. I can get frosted strawberry, which I think is disgusting. I do not like frosted strawberry at all. I know so many people who love frosted strawberry Pop Tarts. I do not. Absolutely not. Strawberry flavored anything other than Starburst is nasty to me. I don't like it. Not at all. But I can get those. I can get brown sugar cinnamon, which I do like brown sugar cinnamon. I'm not saying that's a bad flavor, but I can get those. I can even get like the s'mores or like blueberry or whatever, but no love for frosted cherry. I can only get frosted cherry in regular boxes, and that's bullshit. I don't like that. I don't like the fact that frosted cherry gets treated like a redheaded stepchild of the Pop-Tart flavors. And why do so many people hate it? Like, why are there people out there that just don't like frosted cherry? I don't get it. This came up recently because we have Pop-Tarts in our vending machine at work, and people are like, when I bring up the fact that we don't have frosted cherry, people are like, ugh, frosted cherry. I'm like, what? What did frosted cherry ever do to you? I don't understand what the problem is. Frosted cherry. Frosted cherry for life. Pop-Tarts. Yes, that is 100%, 1000% my favorite Pop-Tart flavor. I like other ones, but that's my favorite. Number one. Frosted cherry. Absolutely. I will ride or die for frosted cherry Pop-Tart flavor going forward. Period. No apologies. All right. Question 4. This looks like a bit of a longer one. He says, so lately, whenever I end up in a YouTube live chat, whenever it pertains to DC, I occasionally see a lot more BVS sucked, BVS is crap messages. But there were also some that enjoy it, while other DC movies aren't mentioned nearly as much in these live chats. I try to avoid them when I can, but rather than get defensive, I just use an analogy. Nu metal. He says, I enjoy the hell out of nu metal, but it is easy to ridicule online compared to other musical genres based on the consensus across the internet over the past 10 years. I admit it. I like some Limp Bizkit songs, and I don't care if it's all subjective. And I don't care, rather, it's all subjective. Fred Durst is not that great a guy, but some of their songs are bangers. My Way is catchy. I usually use them as a frame of reference when it comes to BVS sometimes, he says. I might throw in Nickelback or Linkin Park or Shinedown, but in terms of ridicule, I think Limp Bizkit gets the most hate out of any of these bands, just as BVS does. Really? I thought Nickelback got more hate than Limp Bizkit. I could be wrong. I haven't really paid attention to that chatter, but either way. He says, I can use other new metal bands for other Bay or Snyder movies. Yep. Like Transformers makes sense for Linkin Park since they use their songs prominently in the films. Watchmen, maybe 3 Days Grace or something, I don't know. Man of Steel, maybe Nickelback. But yeah, Limp Bizkit is probably the most hated new metal band based on my experiences, and maybe most people who hate BVS don't actually think it's the worst thing that ever happened to the superhero genre or cinema, but the way they talk about it, you would think they did think that way. Do you think my analogy is a fair one? Do you like some new metal bands or some songs? What do you think about Limp B? Love to hear your thoughts. I've never disliked Limp Bizkit. I've never had issues with Limp Bizkit. I can't say that I'm a massive fan, but I have liked some of their songs. There was one. Which one did they use? They did one for Mission Impossible 2, didn't they? Which Mission Impossible 2 is like the redheaded stepchild of that franchise, which is sad because it's the John Woo directed one, and it's a John Woo action movie. And I own it just like I own the other eight. I don't you can't own part of a set. I own and enjoy all the Mission Impossible films, but yeah, I've never disliked Limp Bizkit. I don't have any issues with them at all in that regard. Not at least not as far as their music. I can't immediately think of off the top of my head a bunch of their songs that I enjoy, but yeah, I've never had any issues with that. But any of the bands that you listed with, it's I haven't listened to enough of them or Linkin Park or Nickelback to be like, ugh, I don't like this, or hey, I really like that. No, I'm not massive fans of any of those bands, but I also don't dislike any of them. They're all fine. I don't have any problems with it. I get what you're saying with respect to your analogy. I would say that, especially in a YouTube live chat, BVS is the easy way to stoke the fire. The thing is, whether people dislike that movie that much anymore or not, they know that it's a hot button. They know that it's a trigger for people. All they have to do is say that they hate BVS, and they'll get a whole bunch of attention. They'll get a whole bunch of attacks oh, I can't believe it, da 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 da, because they know the Snyder Bros, they know that the Snyder cultists will get all up in their feelings about it, and it's an easy way to attract attention. It's an easy way to get under somebody's skin. So yeah, ignore them because they're probably trolls and bots in the first place. But that's all it is. BVS is just a hot button, whether people actually like it that much or not. I feel like the general audience probably has largely dismissed or forgotten about that movie to this point, especially with the Batman having come out 3 years ago, and once the Batman Part 2 releases in 2027, or when we get the DCU Batman, they'll forget about it even further, and, they'll put it to the back burner, and then, maybe it'll get some more appreciation later down the road, perhaps, I don't know, but yeah, I feel like now when you see that reaction on social media especially, and certainly in YouTube live chats, it's just people trying to, stoke the fire, people trying to get a rise. It's whatever, not a big deal. I wouldn't take any of what they say seriously with respect to that. All right, so this third email that John sent starts a little bit explosive because it's political in nature, and I don't shy away from politics. I'm not a political show. I don't talk about politics in depth here, but John, on occasion, will talk politics in this regard. He sent this on Wednesday, November 5th. So it was the day after the big primaries that a lot of Democrat candidates won the previous Tuesday. And he says, and he didn't talk about it a whole lot, so just one paragraph. Let's just get this going. Get this over with, if you will. He says, for the first time since 2020, I am beginning to see a path for the Dems to be pushed left. A Democratic Socialist mayor who's left of AOC and Bernie, yes, Zoran Mamdani. This is the way, he says. I hope Mamdani makes New York City the best place to live for people. I didn't get that luxury when I briefly lived there back in 2017. While I still hope the day comes for ranked choice voting or approval voting to pass across the country to end this perpetual red versus blue ping pong game for now. And he included a gif of the Ninth Doctor, Christopher Eccleston, just this once, everybody lives. For Dems, it was a valiant victory Tuesday. The ball is in their court now. They can't fumble this ball again anyway. That's enough about politics. One more thing I will say, it is rather poignant that you, John, are saluting the election of Zoran Mamdani to mayor of New York, and you yourself are, as you said earlier, Jewish. So I think that's extremely notable and very commendable in that regard, because it certainly pushes you ahead of all of the lowest common denominator bots, trolls, and assholes that just have slung all manner of racism and bigotry at him being from whatever religious or ethnic persuasions, in that regard. So kudos to you for that one, for absolutely, seeing past any potential bigotry and whatnot that could be perceived from that, because you know where I'm coming from with respect to that. And of course, you're not a bigoted individual. No, 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 sir. No doubt about it. But I'm just saying, I think that's very telling for people who think that the lines are so cleanly drawn between those who oppose him and those who support him. And no, it most certainly is not. Certainly not in a political sense in that regard. And a lot of people are basically using his nationality as an excuse to be racist and an excuse to be bigots. And I am grateful, John, that you were not one of those people. No doubt. So, all right. Enough about politics. Here we go. Additional media content. Video games. All right, some video game talk here. He says, I've been predominantly playing Switch 1 and 2 games. I've been mostly playing WWE 2K25 and Mario Galaxy 2. I'm having fun going back and forth as both Mario Brothers in that game, but I eventually plan to go revisit the first Mario Galaxy at some point. Me and Tammy have been playing Super Mario Maker 2 together. I plan to start playing Luigi's Mansion 1 again really soon. I kind of wish they'd release it at the beginning of last month to coincide with Halloween. You know what games on Nintendo Switch Online I'm still surprised they haven't dropped yet, he says? The Pokemon games. Red, Blue, Yellow, Japan exclusive, Green, Gold, Silver, Crystal, Ruby, Sapphire, Emerald. Then he says they're dropping the effing Virtual Boy games before the Game Boy era Pokemon games? Pro wrestler Hurricane Helm's catchphrase and The Rock. Oh, a gift that says, what's up with that? Fair enough. So going back to those Mario games that you mentioned, let's see. I didn't play Luigi's Mansion a ton, if much at all, because at the time it came out, I didn't have a GameCube. I didn't have a GameCube until much later, but it is something that I should revisit on the Switch. I also didn't really play Mario Galaxy 2. For as much of a Mario fan as I am, I have a backlog of Mario games that I have not played, like, since I got into my current industry, my current career, and it's been like over a decade since I worked at GameStop. Because back then, if I had still worked at GameStop, I absolutely would have played Mario Galaxy 2 at some point. But yeah, has not happened as of yet. It will. It most certainly will. In fact, I should probably play it before the movie comes out next year. There's a good idea. But yeah, you can't go wrong with a Mario game. You just can't. As far as Virtual Boy games for Game Boy era Pokemon games, yeah, that's a little surprising because I didn't know that Virtual Boy had that big of an outpouring or a demand. But hey, either way, whatever they want to do, we'll see. Nintendo knows how to hype up supply and demand. That's for damn sure. Then he says, okay. He's got a gif of somebody hiding behind a couch. He says, get ready for this. Only sharing this with you and the listeners. I own 3 cell phones, he says. He's got a gif of Fry from Futurama horrified. Yes. Oh, it's true. It's damn true. How did this happen? Some of you might be wondering. How you have 3 cell phones? Lightly curious. He says, well, Mint Mobile, my provider, was having a sale, and $700 half off. That's right, half off. I paid $375 for a $700 phone. My Google Pixel 9 is the best phone ever, so why did I keep my older model? Well, see, the thing is, it got water damaged, he says, and I only had access to a certain website that was exclusive to that phone that couldn't change the password or anything without going through hoops and hurdles to get there. So yes, I held on to my Google Pixel 6a and my new Pixel 9. All right. The third phone, he says, was an older Google Pixel 3. See, my dad got a new phone that was on sale and didn't think it was worth anything to sell his old phone, so I asked and he gifted it to me, and now I have access to use Pokemon Go 3 with 3 different accounts, have different apps for each different device, can interchange between social media accounts, have a spare backup phone that I can use thanks to the Talkaphone app. So yes, there are quite the advantages. The only thing that could be an inconvenience is I can't travel with all 3 unless I have a hotspot, he says. All right. Okay. No judgment here. No need to hide behind the couch. It is what it is. I don't see the need for that many cell phones, but you know what? I'm not going to knock somebody that has that many. There are other advantages to having multiple cell phone lines as well, if you can afford them in that regard. I get it. He says, anyway, that's it for this flight chat. The following flight chat will be on the day of my birthday, the 15th. I will be 36 years old. Yep, 36. But hey, you're nearly 43, and I sometimes think you're still in your 30s, so maybe my age isn't so old. It's not. It's not old. It's not old at all. Just go ahead and say that. My girlfriend is almost 1.5 years older than me, and she can pull off being in her 20s, he says. You know how you say black don't crack? What's the Asian equivalent to that? You know what? I'm not even going to touch that one. I just know oftentimes Asians seem to have good genes too. Anyway, I know these 3 emails are a long submissive, so I'm going to sign off sending any more emails this week, barring any big shocking news. Well, that was on November 5th that he said that. I don't know what the Asian equivalent of black don't crack is. If there are any Asian people out there, Asian listeners that have a suggestion, please let us know, because I don't know what the saying for that would be. But I hear you. There are definitely some Asian people, minorities in general, that age very well, extremely well. There's probably people that age. Paul Rudd. Paul Rudd is ageless, right? So sometimes it just transcends ethnicity and goes into just what type of a person you are. And I feel like that's where it begins, where it starts from in the first place for most people, to be honest with you, John. But based on what you just said, your birthday happened yesterday as of the time of me recording this, because I'm recording this now on late Sunday the 16th. You said your birthday was on the 15th, if I'm not mistaken. And you also sent another email saying that you were going to have a big birthday weekend. So I imagine that you will have some thoughts with respect to share with us. You don't have to, but if you want to share a few thoughts from how your birthday weekend went, you most certainly can on the next flight chat with respect to that. So, yeah, I hear you. I hope you had a good weekend. Hope it was safe and sound. Hope it was a fun 36 for you, and we will talk to you soon, good sir. Thank you, as always, for the feedback. All right, next up, Jared Cardos chimed in with an email. This one was sent also last week. He sent an email titled, You'll Flight To and Other Things. He sent this on Friday, November 7th. So this wouldn't have been actually, no, it would have been for the previous Flight Chat episode. But he says, Hey, Ray, hope you're doing well. Before I get into the stuff I was going to talk about, I wanted to throw this out early. As I'm finishing this up, today is N7 day. Is N7 because it's November 7th? Is that what it is, N7? Because people were saying that the other day, or like last week, and I was like, wait a minute, what makes that day N7 day? And yeah, sure enough, according to Google, that's exactly what it is. It's held on November 7th every year to celebrate Mass Effect in that regard. And BioWare does things and has some events and announcements and whatnot for that. But Jared says BioWare did a release blog for N7 Day back on November 7th last week. And while there isn't a lot to talk about, since it sounds like there's still early days about the next Mass Effect game, though they did have a fun little ARG to get some cool concept art, they did reveal some news, he says, about the TV show that's being produced at Amazon, saying they're working in the writer's room to do an original story that does not star Commander Shepard. Interesting. Per the blog, quote, because after all, that's your story, isn't it? Which is a relief, he says. While I'm sure they could have done a good TV show with the characters, I have to imagine that would cause more fan consternation than not. Yeah, more than likely. It's tricky because the Shepard thing, I get why they wouldn't do it, because the problem with the Shepard thing is that you craft so much of your story out of the choices that you make, not only in the game, but before the game when you design the character, in terms of what your background is and what your story is going to be, and who you know and what you're connected to. And that's just at the beginning of the first game. Never mind all the choices you make in the first game, plus choices in the second and third games that you make. So yeah, it's a very interactive story. It would be really difficult, because whatever version of Shepard they chose, male or female, would be restricted to one particular story, and those of us that play the game would be sitting there like, yeah, well, we didn't pick this choice, we went a different way. Or maybe he or she has less or more biotics than the one in the show does. Yeah, I hear you. There'd be some consternation with that. Fans have consternation about any and everything. But he says what's most interesting, though, is that it's apparently going to be set after the original trilogy. So I'm really curious, he says, to see what they do with that story and how they handle the whole ending issue. Oh yeah, that's true, because what ending do they go with respect to what actually happened? That's a good point. He says, in case you're curious, this is the concept art we eventually found. Not sure if this is for the TV show or for the game, but it is intriguing. This concept art, which is titled Civil War, this is basically a bunch of Krogans opening fire. And there's one unhelmeted Krogan, or his helmet's down, that's opening fire, and then plenty other Krogan that, are fully armored that are firing as well. The Krogan Civil War. All right. That is intriguing. Like, after the trilogy, What conflict are the Krogans involved in? I don't know. He said not sure if it's for the TV show or for the game. I would think for the game in that regard, but I don't know. I guess we'll have to wait and see. He says, so this past week, which was last week, while spooky season is officially over, I like to think of it more as a state of mind. And after seeing a bunch of crazy clips for the new show, I decided to finally sit down and watch chapters 1 and 2 of it. All right. Overall, I really enjoyed them. Chapter 1 maybe a little bit more than 2. Yeah, I think maybe not all of us, but most of us, I think, agree Chapter 1 was better than 2, even though I did enjoy both chapters as well. He says Chapter 1 is a fantastic coming-of-age story and has some very great and creepy moments. I have to especially commend Sophia Lillis for nailing some of the heaviest aspects of the story, and Finn Wolfhard, who was in the similar Stranger Things show around the same time, and managed to play the character completely differently. Chapter 2 was also good, though. He says, though I feel like the middle sagged a bit, and I don't know if it needed to be almost 3 hours. While some of the crazy visions were creepy and effective, they could have been condensed down a bit. Maybe somewhere to 2.5 hours? That said, the finale and the way the characters end up were more than satisfying, he says. Overall, 2 very good movies, and while I haven't seen the 90s miniseries, this feels like this will probably be the best adaptation of the story yet. All right. Yeah, I'm with you on that one. That was part of my... the It movies, Chapter 1 and 2, were part of my reawakening to... my reintroduction to the horror genre 6 years ago, for sure. He says, and then there's the new show, It... Welcome to Derry. Oh yeah, I've heard a lot about this one. He says, I was surprised to see this come out, and I have to say 2 episodes in, I am very intrigued so far. At first looking at the trailers in the first episode, I worried that it would feel like a redux of Chapter 1, and without getting too into spoilers, they do several things to show that it most certainly will not be that. It's also bringing in aspects and characters from other King stories, like the appearance of a certain prison, and another character from one of King's more popular stories. So far, it's been the good type of fan service, where it fits the kind of story they're telling and isn't there just to make people do that Leonardo DiCaprio snapping at the TV thing. I'm definitely intrigued and looking forward to seeing where this story goes. One thing about this show and the movies having a bit of resurgence, he says, that's interesting, is that I think it's reminding people that Andy Muschietti is actually a really great director. It's making me even more hopeful and optimistic about him taking on Batman in the Brave and the Bold movie, as he's really good at both psychological and big set-piece moments. He's also really good at directing kids, which is good, considering that Damian Wayne is supposed to play a big part. Yes, assuming that everything that we originally heard about Brave and the Bold holds true, because, through the grapevine there could be changes. Who knows if it still will be him directing? Who knows if it will still be Damian? I know a lot of people online are hoping that it isn't, because they seem to think that we need all the Robins to get their own time in the sun before we go all the way ahead to Damian, even though we've had no Robins have their time in the sun, at least as far as the films, other than Dick Grayson. And so what? You want us to wait for Jason Todd and Tim Drake to get their time before we get to Damian? No, I think that's nonsense, especially since we got Bat Family in live action form in Titans. I don't care if people like that show or not. It existed. So yeah, I'm with you on that one, Jared. Here's hoping. He says, and speaking of segues, a couple of thoughts from FLITE CHAT, starting with John's mentions of actors for Batman and Robin in the DCU. While I don't have a lot of actors in mind that I can name, if there's one thing I do hope they do, is that they find a non-white actor for Damian, as well as Talia and Ra's al Ghul if they show up. In the comics, they've been established to have Arabic and or Chinese heritage, and while I won't be looking for something that specific, I hope that it's a factor for the casting. I would be surprised if it wasn't, especially if you look at, now, Arrow aside, if you look at their castings for Arrow and The Dark Knight aside, I would say, if you look at Gotham's casting for Ra's al Ghul, Alexander Siddig, who is otherwise known, more well known as Dr. Julian Bashir from Star Trek Deep Space Nine, yes, I think they are taking nationality into account. And I think they tried to take that a little bit into account in Arrow as well. I mean, Matt Nable, I forget exactly what he is, like what his ethnicity is in that regard, but I know that with respect to Katrina Law and Lexa Doig, I think they went with characters that you can't really say, and I think she's Canadian. She is Canadian. Lexa's Canadian, and Katrina, I believe her mother is Taiwanese. So those are considerations that I think they have taken into account in the past through television. I would be surprised if they don't take those considerations into account for casting going forward. And I don't say that just because fans have been calling for that, but I think just in general with respect to the histories of those characters. And I would imagine that's something that James Gunn takes into account. It would surprise me if he didn't in that regard. We'll say that for that particular situation. He says, actually, since I've been talking about it, I will say that in terms of Batman, Bill Skarsgård is probably around the right age, and it would be fun to see him go from an evil clown to someone who punches evil clowns. Also, Sophia Lillis, who played young Beverly, definitely has a good look for Barbara Gordon if they decide to bring her into the DCU. Skarsgård, that might be, to me, that would almost be like Christian Bale all over again, like going from American Psycho to Batman. Maybe. I don't know. I mean, I am willing, you know how I feel about the fan casting. I'm willing to see what Gunn and company, choose with respect to that casting, especially for that one, because that's a big one. That's the biggest casting decision next to Superman, honestly, as far as anyone in the DCU. I don't think there's any other character in the DCU that is as important and as well, like publicized, as like hotly like anticipated, if you will, than Batman for sure. Because they're still probably asking Gunn about it to this day. And we're still a ways away from finding out who it is, because we've still got 4 other projects coming out before we even get to a DCU Batman project in this regard. He says during Amr-sized email, he mentioned the possibility of Sony buying Warner Brothers, and I agree that it seems unlikely. But slightly related to that, I've wondered if Sony would end up becoming more linked to or even bought by Netflix. After all, it seems like all of their movies seem to end up on Netflix first, though I suppose that could just be because it's independent from the other streamers. I don't know that that Netflix has the market cap to do that, do they? And is that something they're interested in? I feel like a lot of the same problems, a lot of the same worries that we have, that many of us have about Netflix buying Warner Brothers would pop up the same way with Sony, because the thing is, Sony is a video game, like video game company, and they manage a lot of brands. And Netflix has never shown a compensity to manage brands properly. They just don't have the experience or the ability to do it. And then that's not even getting into the whole physical and digital media. Can you imagine Netflix trying to make everybody play their games on Netflix, or trying to make everybody play their games online without any type of physical component or any of that? And I know games are largely online now with DLC and whatnot as it is. Imagine it getting worse. Imagine Netflix leaning even further into that. I don't think that's something that you want, Jared. I don't think that's something that many other gamers would want in that regard. Just throwing that out there, to be honest with you. That's intriguing, but no, not really hoping for that either. He says, in regard to Kirk and the assumption that he's a womanizer, this has to be Captain James T. Kirk, it does feel like something that's more from fan discussions more than what the show or the movie show to some extent. But I think it's there to a certain degree later on, and I think there's an episode that kind of explains it, though it's more of a fan theory than anything, which I'll try to remember to mention when Amr eventually gets there. No, Jared, I'll disagree. It's there. It's absolutely there in all 3 seasons of the original series. It's there. It's not just in terms of the prior relationships that he has, but it's also in terms of his way towards women in the show. And I can point to a number of episodes. I can point to Shore Leave in season 1 and the whole thing with his ex-girlfriend Ruth. I can point to there's an episode, the Enemy Within, where we see where some of his other instincts are towards women. It not necessarily like how he is overtly or how he is fully, but how some of his other impulses react when put under stress toward women. And it's not anything that we're canceling Kirk. No, nothing like that. But you do see what some of his baser instincts are. There's also an episode in the 2nd season called By Any Other Name, where there is a certain handling of women that he displays there. No, it's there, Jared. It is. It's there. I don't think it's like it innately a fan discussion. I mean, there's definitely plenty of fan discussions, but no. The whole thing about Kirk and his propensity toward women, it's there. It's absolutely there. And they wouldn't have put it in the Kelvin timeline if it hadn't been there. And it's certainly in the Kelvin timeline. It's in that first movie without question. And a little bit in the second movie as well. But yeah, no, it's there. It's definitely not. I don't agree that it's more a fan theory than anything whatsoever. There's evidence, and I don't want to get into too much of it because as Amr goes through the original series, I don't necessarily want to spoil him on certain things that occur or certain interactions that he has, I will just tell you that I disagree with you that it's more fan theory than anything. No, it's there. The fans built on it from somewhere, and it's absolutely 100% there. So I will just say that with respect to that. He says, as for your recent flight cast, I will say that I am also a fan of the V for Vendetta movie, and I did like the book, though I can definitely see why one might like the movie over the book and vice versa, and there are pros and cons to both. Yeah, I imagine there is an island of people who like both the book and the film. But yeah, I don't know. To me, just for me, subjectively speaking, from my perspective, there is a sharp difference between how Alan Moore wrote the book, like the actual stories for the book, and how the movie is composed. And yeah, it was a sharp enough difference that, as many times as I've seen the movie, to read the book and like get that perspective was like, oh wow, okay, it's definitely a bit more dated, actually much more dated in that regard. And that's fine because you expect that an adaptation made in 2005, 2006 is going to be different than the original version written in, when did he write that? The 80s, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, that wasn't an issue, but no, just the way that the story was constructed, the way that the characters were constructed, I just liked the film version better. But hey, you know what? It's all subjective. It's cool that you enjoy both. It's all good in that regard. He says also, as someone who has had to keep cable for much longer than I would have liked, to say that it's cheaper than the streamers is extremely laughable. Yeah, I feel like people that pay attention to how cable has gone and the pricing of all the packages understand the reality of the situation, Jared, as I'm sure you do. But yeah, it's very laughable that anybody would argue otherwise with respect to that. He says, what I do want to mention is the sort of sad news that we will not be getting any further Star Trek movies in the Kelvin timeline. I get why in terms of not having the TV show rights, but I do think the '09 movie and beyond are strong Star Trek flicks and high on my list. And while Into Darkness, in my opinion, is the weakest of the films, it's still a fun watch, at least. Part of me definitely wished there could have been a final film to officially give them a last hurrah, but from what I remember of Beyond, it does do a decent job at that anyway. Yes, it does, I would say. That said, I am really curious to find out what that original Trek movie is going to be, what period it's in, what it'll do differently from the shows, and all of that. I think that'll do it for this one. Thanks for reading and looking forward to your future episodes. Jared, you wrote this one after, I mean, thank you, of course, as always, for the feedback. Greatly appreciated. You wrote that response before I did my Patreon episode. I did an episode of Friday Flight the other night talking about the new article with respect to thoughts on, Skydance and Paramount saying that this new movie that it's going to be John Francis Daly and Jonathan Goldstein, the Game Night directors, and also the Dungeons and Dragons directors, and how apparently it's going to be unconnected from anything previously we've seen in Star Trek. And I have some very strong thoughts on that. And personally, it's the same reason that I feel about the way that I do about the Kelvin timeline with respect to, you have this wealth of content, this wealth of lore within the Prime timeline that goes nearly 60 years. Why would you ignore it? Why would you dismiss it when you don't need to? The Kelvin timeline was a franchise born out of necessity because they needed it, because they couldn't directly draw on anything from the original series as far as plot lines, as far as stories and everything like that. Now you don't have that problem. Now you don't have that barrier, so there's no need to separate them as going forward in this regard. So the Kelvin timeline served its purpose, and yeah, I go into it a lot more in depth in that episode, but yeah, that's pretty much where I sit with it. So I'm really not sad about it, to be honest with you. I mean, Beyond is a good send off, I think, for that crew, and it was a good tribute, a good 50th anniversary film to really like speak to the the roots and the annals of the franchise for sure. I think it did a really good job with respect to that. And if that's the last film that we get with that particular cast and crew, then so be it. I'm okay with that. That I'm fine. I don't think they were left hanging like off a cliff. It would have been cool to see more stuff after that, but it's just not necessary anymore. Not with what they've been doing on Paramount Plus and CBS All Access for the last 7 to 8 years in that regard. So yeah, I'm curious to see what they do, and hopefully it's connected to the Prime timeline going forward. But again, thank you as always for the feedback, Jared. Definitely greatly appreciated. And finally, we have an email from Larry Griffin Jr. that he sent yesterday, which technically was after the deadline, but doesn't really matter because, like I said, this is it. This is it as far as emails are concerned. So this one was titled Catching Up, My Vivid Imagination and Other Miscellaneous Stuff. And I have to squint a bit because I don't know why, for whatever, this has happened before with Larry's emails where like the font is like white and it like doesn't, it clashes against the white background of Gmail. Cause I don't know, can't we turn this to dark or how would that affect the typing? I'm not sure exactly, but either way, we're just going to roll with it. He says, how's it going, Ray? Don't you hate it when life interferes with your fun? LOL. My fencing assembly job I mentioned a while ago let me go due to lack of work back in August, 2 days before my birthday, no less. Oh, that is awful. Sorry to hear that. And I've been at another job since early September. Okay, well, good. You got another job. I'm actually in the midst of looking for something else because being hired through staffing agencies sucks. The pay simply isn't there. I have a few in the pipeline, and whoever calls me first will get me. LOL. All right, well, best of luck to you on that job hunt, Larry. I know it's very tough, very, very tough out there, and I salute everyone that tries to traverse it, and wish the best of luck to all the good people out there looking for work at this point in time, because companies are even more dickish with respect to hiring than they have been in the past. He says, super random, but you want to know how crazy my imagination was as a kid? I used to write short stories as a teen that used characters from all kinds of things that I was watching: Star Wars, Power Rangers, etc. For example, Darkwing Duck and my younger sister Lauren were Jedi Knights leading a Rebel Alliance team against a galactic empire led by Dark Clank, a Sith Lord version of Clank, King Mondo's monster maker from Power Rangers Zeo, and Psylocke from the X-Men. Darth Vader even made occasional appearances in an Emperor Palpatine-like role. Did the Transformers show up? Or Darkseid? Did Darkwing and Dark Clank have to join forces against Darkseid? Did Lauren fall prey to the anti-life equation and join the New Gods? Did Darkwing have to fight her in a Revenge of the Sith-esque final showdown? Did Magneto save the universe from total annihilation after being banished to another planet due to inadvertently ruining one of Dark Clank's earlier schemes to defeat Darkwing's Rebel Alliance? Maybe? LOL, he says. As far as any writing nowadays, I'm actually in the midst of writing a story about a girl from Australia who grows up dealing with a domineering alcoholic aunt. Well, that sounds heavy. That sounds very heavy. As far as your imagination is concerned, I think basically you just wrote down versions of stories that the rest of us played out with action figures and toys, truthfully, because that's what it sounds like. When you have a collection of toys and action figures from different franchises as a kid, you don't care. Like you don't care about lines of demarcation. You don't care about this franchise being here and that franchise being there. You don't care about what's canon and what's this and what's that. You don't have all the same compunctions that you get when you get older, that people give you when you get older. So yeah, you're going to cross the streams. Crossing the streams as a child is completely understandable, and we all did it. You just did it in written form, which quite honestly probably put you a leg up on the rest of us, because the rest of us, that just played out in our heads and in our imaginations, whenever we played with our action figures. But you actually put pen to paper, my good friend. So that's cool. That's really cool. I like that. That's very imaginative. He says, Midsommar. I'm so glad that you watched it. I've only seen the director's cut, which I had to drive to another town to see, so I don't know what wasn't in the theatrical. Did you see a nighttime scene? If not, there's one in the director's cut and it's crazy, LOL. I don't remember. I feel like was it an extended nighttime scene? This is the crazy thing, because like I've talked about, like one of the things I mentioned in Flight Fright is that I do wish to add Midsommar to my library. It may end up being one of those movies that I just have and don't really like seek out to watch. I have a couple of those, like Schindler's List and Seven. It's like, okay, it's there. I can watch it if I want to, but I'm not in a hurry, right? But the thing is, with Midsommar, I know that and I mentioned this, there's a 171-minute director's cut that is obviously significantly longer than the 2 hour and 21-minute theatrical cut that I did watch. I don't remember what was there, but clearly there's a lot more there. And yeah, and one day I'll sit down and watch it and get creeped out all over again, but I don't know when that's going to be. But yeah, I don't remember. I can't remember offhand if there was a specific. I'm not recalling a nighttime sequence. Most of the creepy, crazy stuff that happened in that movie happened in the daytime. So if there was an extended nighttime sequence, then yeah, did not see that. But yeah, he says, your description of the film on Flight Fright is spot on. Very unsettling, deeply terrifying at times, and incredibly disturbing. After seeing it on a Labor Day weekend in 2019, I thought about it for 2 weeks, he says. I eventually bought it, but I've yet to revisit it. This was my introduction to Florence Pugh. She and the whole cast were amazing. You know what, Larry? Thank you for bringing this up because this also allows me an opportunity to bring up a recent interview that Florence Pugh did where she was recanting her psyche with respect to Midsommar. Now, I saw this from Hollywood Reporter. This was 4 days ago. It says Florence Pugh says filming Midsommar led to 6 months of depression. Quote, it really effed me up. The actress admits she really put myself through it when taking on her emotionally distraught character Danny in the film. This was written by Carly Thomas at Hollywood Reporter. Variety also did a piece on this. But it says Florence Pugh is getting vulnerable and opening up about the emotional impact of filming Midsommar, saying, quote, it really effed me up. The Oscar-nominated actress shared during a recent interview on the Louis Theroux podcast that playing Danny in the Ari Aster-directed film led to 6 months of depression. After a devastating family tragedy, her character joins her toxic boyfriend on a trip to a remote Swedish commune, where she ends up having a psychological breakdown after being the target of a cult's manipulation. Quote, I just can't exhaust myself like that because it has a knock-on effect, she admitted. I think Midsommar made me sad for like 6 months after, and I didn't know why I was depressed. I got back after shooting Little Women, which was such a fun experience and obviously a completely different tone from Midsommar, so I think I shelved all of that. And then when I got home for Christmas, I was so depressed, and I was like, oh, I think that's from Midsommar, and I didn't deal with it, and I probably shouldn't do that again. Pugh said she had, quote, never seen that level of grief or mental health in the way that was being asked of me on the page, which led her to go all in on the role to fully understand the horrible state of Danny's life. I really put myself through it, she explained. At the beginning, I just imagined hearing the news that one of my siblings had died, and then toward the middle of the shoot, it was like, oh no, I actually needed to imagine the coffins. And then towards the end of the shoot, I actually was going to my whole family's funeral. It wasn't just crying, I needed to sound pain, the Thunderbolt star continued. I'd never done anything like that before, and I was like, okay, well, here's my opportunity. I need to give this a go. And I would just basically put myself through hell. But I don't do that anymore. It really effed me up, she says. Pugh said she initially realized how much playing a distraught character impacted her while on a flight heading to film Greta Gerwig's Little Women after wrapping Midsommar. She recalled breaking down in tears because she felt like she had left Danny in that field with the film crew just filming her cry. My brain was obviously feeling sympathy for myself because I'd abused myself and really manipulated my own emotions to get a performance, but then I also felt sorry for what I'd done, the We Live in Time actress admitted. Quote, it was very, very strange. That's a random article that came out 4 days ago with respect to this, because again, she was on Justin Theroux's podcast speaking about it. But I got the notification for that, and I was like, well, I'm not surprised. And I like that she said that in terms of like, you know, that very last part where she said she recalled breaking down in tears because she felt like she'd left Danny in that field with the film crew just filming her cry, because apparently there are people who think that's a happy ending. There are people who think it's a liberating ending. There are people who believe that Danny is actually more empowered at the end of that movie instead of being trapped in that Swedish death cult. And basically, the tears are tears of delusion and pain because you're trapped there until, 72 when they throw you off a cliff, right? For people who, for those who have seen the movie, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But yeah, I could absolutely see anyone that method acts their way through that particular character, yeah, I could absolutely see where it would F them up for sure. So, yeah, I'm with you on that, Larry. I just wanted to bring that up real quick because, yeah, that article was just posted a couple of days ago. And thank you for bringing up Midsommar because, yeah, it's a crazy experience. And at some point, like I said, I will watch that director's cut and I'll probably talk about it on FLITE CHAT or FLITE Review or something, probably on Patreon, and just be like, get all unsettled again, because holy shit, very effective film, very effective in what it did, very well done, but crazy, absolutely batshit crazy. But all right, moving on. Larry says, Superman, my better late than never thoughts. I love the way that they use the John Williams theme throughout the film without it being too in your face. Kudos to the cast and crew, Superman's speech to Lex, and the song Punk Rocker. I'm looking forward to Man of Tomorrow. The more Superman, the better. All right, so you have seen Superman. You have joined the ranks. I imagine you saw it on HBO Max or through streaming or whatnot because it's been on streaming for the last couple of months. Cool. Glad you enjoyed it. It is really good. It's still, I put that, Man of Steel is my 1A, Superman is my 1B as far as favorite Superman movies of all time. And I do enjoy aspects of all of them, right? Even 3 and 4. You can't own part of a set. There are things about 3 and 4 that I do like, even though they're really not great movies. But it is what it is. It's all subjective. He says, also, I remember gasping when you said you've never seen Mean Girls. Never? Don't you know that everyone in the English-speaking world has seen that film? It's just so fetch. LOL, just messing with you. It's such an entertaining and quotable film, he says. I love it and would recommend it. And I'm happy that Lindsay overcame her addiction issues and is happy and healthy again. The first thing I ever saw her in was the Parent Trap remake in 1998. Me and Lauren got dropped off at the theater while we were out with the parents and caught an afternoon showing. It was so fun and cute. Wally, you mentioned Freakier Friday, and I barely remember anything from the first one. Time for a rewatch, LOL. Hashtag Lohanaissance. Yeah, no, Mean Girls, it's on the list. It is, and it's one that I probably should watch sooner than later because it can't be a terribly long movie. It can't, not to get this type of notoriety. It can't be more than 2 hours, right? And I think is it on Paramount Plus? I think so. I think it's one of those. But yeah, one of these days in the not too distant future, I got to check it out. The original one, not the reboot. Maybe I'll watch the reboot later, but I definitely have to see that original one first before seeing anything about a reboot or anything else like that. He says, one more thing. Someone was going off about the scale of a Lego Enterprise. It can't be 1000% accurate, or they would have to build a whole new house for it to fit. LOL. Until next time, Larry Griffin Jr. Yeah, that was because Lego has finally partnered up with Paramount. They finally partnered up with Star Trek as a franchise for licensed Star Trek sets. And the first one, hopefully the first of many, is a 3,600 piece model of the Enterprise D, which goes on sale on Black Friday. And yeah, there was an individual on Threads that was complaining that it wasn't big enough and that it wasn't as detailed as it should have been compared to other models that he's seen. And I vehemently disagree. I've talked with Anthony about this because Anthony Dorsey is the other really big Lego fan that I know of that listens to my show. And we've had discussions. He actually sent me the links and whatnot about the leaks for this months ago. And so I've been waiting for official word, and we have official word now. We're just waiting for it to go on sale in, less than 2 weeks. And yeah, I think it looks phenomenal. I am very much looking forward to it. And can't wait to get that going. Because, I've been waiting my whole life for Star Trek licensing to reach Lego, and it finally has, so many different Star Wars sets, away from that, right? Because growing up, Lego didn't have licensing to either one. And then I get into high school and they get the Star Wars licensing, and they've made a ton of Star Wars sets since then. A few of those that I have, more that I wish I had that I would love to own down the road, when I have a house and can build an actual Lego room. But now Star Trek, adding Star Trek into the mix. Yeah, that's going to be awesome. And I don't see anything in the scale of that model that looks off or bad. No, for minifig scale, there's no way. You would need a house. A garage would fit the saucer section. That's it, right? And if you try to add a bridge, and Anthony and I talked about this, you try to add a bridge to that set where they can actually sit in chairs. One, it's going to be undersized, and two, it's going to bulge out the rest of the saucer section and not make it available to separate and do what it does in a clean fashion. I'm glad they did not do that. I'm glad that they did not try to make a playset version of that, because no, if you're going to make it 3,600 pieces, just make it accurate to how it looks in the show. Never mind trying to fit the figures into it. Just give us the separate minifigures, which they are, and I'm very happy about that. So yeah, I think that person grousing about it is being very unrealistic in that regard, and I don't agree with their perspective. But hey, to each their own. They want to feel that way about it, be miserable about it, that's fine. I will enjoy that set without their help and without their input. So either way, thank you as always for the feedback, Larry. Greatly appreciated. Looking forward to the next email that you send in, good sir. And that'll do it for this episode of Flight Chat. Only a couple of emails this week, but thank you to John Rossler, thank you to Jared Cardos, and thank you to Larry Griffin for your emails and submitting to the feedback circle this particular week. If anybody else has any emails that they want to send in, any thoughts on what we talked about in this show, or any other thoughts with respect to movies, TV, and other assorted media that you would like to join the feedback circle with, You know where to find me on Threads and Instagram at the FlightCast, on BlueSky at the FlightCast. You can comment on the posting for this episode of Flight Chat on the FlightCast YouTube channel at youtube.com/theflightcast. There's also the FlightCast Facebook page, and of course, I can be reached by email at ray@theflightcast.com. All right, take care, stay safe out there, have a great week, and I will see you all next time. Take it easy.